Hello, and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a weekly book club podcast talking about Dungeons & Dragons. Never again. We've decided not. And talk about how we can include it and improve it for all of our role-playing campaigns. With me back in the studio for a second time is the wonderful Taylor Felicity. Hello, Taylor. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. It's been a hot minute since you've been back. Obviously, we'd gushed over how amazing Good Society is, and that was certainly first edition. And as of recording, hilariously, the playtest for second edition has come out the day of, and we were both like, damn it. Well, I think some of must just know that you're about to come on that podcast to talk about their work, so they're like, quick, get it out now, so she doesn't have to talk about it. But no doubt we'll talk about that at some point. But since then, how have you been? Any games? What have you been up to, my friend?
Games-wise, probably the biggest thing is, I think I mentioned during the last episode that I have a long-running Monster Hearts game.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, we only have a few sessions left. We kind of started barreling towards an ending. So I'm really excited for that. And we've kind of got the main action going. And then there's a game I really like called World Ending Game by Everett Pipkin. I believe it might be Everest Pipkin.
Yeah.
But it's like a game for wrapping up campaigns. That's very cool. So we're going to do that. And then the other thing is I have been playing Good Society. I have a game of Good Society and started playing games that I mentioned last episode, and I got players to do it. So we had our first session 0 and then our first actual session. So that's going very well. And I'm playing with somebody who's never played Good Society before, and then a couple people who have, and it's been really fun.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, that world ending game. I think I've read through that. I can visualize a purple cover with flames, but I don't know if that's just a random... Okay, great. I certainly, as I was saying,
I think that's right.
Yeah, really interesting games like that, which that are specifically aimed for other games that are finished or other stories that are finishing up. I always find that really interesting as a debrief or a bleed kind of safety tool sort of thing. So that's really cool. And congratulations on almost finishing a long-running campaign. Not many people get to finish games. A lot of people start games and then they all peter out. So how long's this game been going on for, the Monster of the Week game?
I think about 4 years. I think it's 4 years this month, which is very long for a PBTA game.
Yeah.
One thing I'm excited about with using World Ending Game to kind of wrap it up after we finish a couple more sessions is Powered by the Apocalypse games are very good at keeping momentum going and having new things happen, but it's a little rough to try to pare down because there's so many things where it's like, this happens, but this other thing. So there's a lot of little unfinished threads that I think World Ending Game will do a good job of kind of wrapping things up or leaving things in a fun place.
And I know obviously you're running that game, but is it too late to say that? Are you taking a break then, or are you straight into another long camp? What is there a plan yet, or are you we're just gonna see what happens, and then 'cause obviously it's gonna be such a big change to not have a regular game, a long-running campaign. So is the plan to start a new one with somebody else, or GMing, or what's the plan? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I always have other things I want to GM. I think Monster Hearts, and then I think I mentioned this last episode that I was on, I had a really long-running D&D game that I ended last year. I definitely want to run more stuff. I do want to run a Brindlewood Bay game. I've run that a couple times last year for Start Playing Games. I want to run it for just some friends of mine who I think would have a lot of fun. But I think at least for the foreseeable future, I'm done with kind of nebulous ongoing things. I really like having run 2 games like that. I think it's really cool to be able to take your time and dive into things. But it's also, like you said, kind of miraculous if they ever end. And having done it hopefully twice, I think I'm more interested in getting people together and saying, okay, we're going to play Brindlewood Bay. It's going to be 8 to 12 sessions and then we're going to be done. Or, I mean, honestly, Castles in the Air, reading this, I was like, oh, I really want to play this.
I knew as soon as I said, we should do this. And I sent you over and I was like, yeah, Taylor's done for now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just about to say, my only long running campaign, which I was just a player in, was just 5 years of D&D. And it was so good to have that, and it felt like we're all in sync, and it was, great, system aside, obviously. So the fact you've done that twice now is so cool, and it's that sort of very privilege, both of us, privileged to be able to have games that have had a lasting impact on us because everyone was like very committed to it, everyone's on the same page, but also willing to try different systems, and also, hopefully, be able to do it again and again for different games. As we joke about, the forever GM or the trying to get everyone around the room. We know that the games fall apart, but when you're able to hit all the right factors and, you're like, I've got a long-running 2-year plus campaign, you're like, oh my God, they've done it. They've made it out of the chat. They've made it to the table and they're having fun. And I always hope to hear more about it. And loads of games. So like you said, they're powered by the apocalypse, obviously. I'd love to do like a long-running Blades in the Dark campaign, or just because I love the idea of like having an impact on the world and the whole world changing around you, and what does that mean? So I'm very envious I don't have a long running campaign anymore. That's okay, we know about it. So as you sort of buried the lead a little bit, Taylor, what are we talking about today? What is our topic of choice?
So today we're talking about the game Castles in the Air, which is a penned to Good Society game. I think is what they call it. It's penned to. But a lot of the same mechanics as Good Society, but adapted for a slightly different genre and mood. So Castles in the Air is set during the Gilded Age, and is set, you can choose wherever you'd like, but suggested to be set in New England or Canada, kind of more rural-ish Canada, because of the two big inspirations, which are Little Women and Anne of Green Gables. Anne of Green Gables, it was so formative to me.
Oh, really?
As a child. Yeah. I used to watch, because it was really special to my mom, and so she watched the miniseries, I think when she was a young adult, so I would watch that with her. Fell in love with Gilbert Blythe, wanted to be Anne.
Oh, very cute.
So very formative. And then Little Women, probably not as... I haven't watched as many adaptations of Little Women, but I did read the book when I was a teenager, I think, and have seen multiple adaptions. And
so many,
of course,
there,
as like a creative queer woman, like Jo March. I mean, that's like kind of everyone is like,
we all see ourselves in her. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So excited to talk about this one.
Yeah, I find it really interesting because obviously, like Good Society, I feel like I can relate to more in the sense of like, Regency, like from the UK originally, so that's kind of where things are set. And I think I've read a more classics that are sort of set in Regency, or obviously we have Bridgerton. But my sort of confession is that I've never read or seen any of Anne of Green Gables. I know of it. Little Women, I haven't actually read or seen. I know of it because of two things. One was that, and maybe we talked about this before, there was a YouTube channel years and years ago that sort of did, not a parody, but did like a modern retelling of various stories. And they did one of Little Women, which was like the four sisters doing the vlog about how things are going. And so I know how it ends because one of them gets sick and then the videos stop. And I was like, this is very sad. But then the other, on the flip side of it, I did see a long, long time ago a stage production called Very Little Women, and it had one guy and two girls doing the whole of Little Women, but it was just them. And I just remember seeing this, it was all very parody and very fun. And I remember seeing when they were like, "Father's come home," and they went, and someone came in with like a. Sorry, I'm laughing so hard, but it was like a coat, like standing coat, a rack, and a hat on top of it, and they were surrounding it like, "Father, father," and it was like, and it just, and then you moved from one room to another, and it was like, that's father. He's the standing coat rack with a hat on it, and it was just so funny because I was like going like, what? Why? There's only 3 of them, but there's 4. That's 4 main ladies, and they were swapping wigs and all that, and it just felt really fun. Like again, so I've seen parody of it, and I've seen a modern retelling of it, but I've actually not seen any of the stuff. Not even the film that had Timothée Chalamet in.
Oh yeah.
Recently, but like everyone's going, "Oh my god, this guy!" And I'm like, a guy? And then of course it's like, I'm now in Dune. I'm in all these cool films, so that's what I'm going for this. But it feels interesting because like it feels so different from Good Society. Like it's very, very different genres. But interestingly, I'm like, when I was reading it, I was like, oh, I absolutely can see myself playing this or having a better time of it because you get to explore the whole character from childhood up to this adulthood, and then getting really deep into the characters, which I know you'd love as well.
Yeah, it is really interesting looking at this game in comparison to Good Society. I think it's edited, I think, by the two main people in the Storybrewers team, but the main author is not someone who is involved with Good Society, if I remember correctly. So it's interesting to see. Actually, at parts, I had the Good Society book on one monitor and Castles in the Air on one, especially during the facilitator section, because a lot of it was exactly the same. It was the exact same writing with different examples that are suited to the specific game. And like the resolve tokens, that was, I mean, I didn't do a strict comparison, but it's pretty similar, if not exactly the same wording.
Well, actually, what I was going to say about the resolve tokens, because something you brought up last time we spoke about it, because I was like, one of the critiques of it was like, oh, do I need resolve tokens? And you were like, well, actually, good about consent, all that sort of thing. And that's all in Castles in the Air. It talks about it, what do I need consent? And I was like, oh my God, did Taylor write this bit? Like, because I thought I hadn't read it or anything, but I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But like clearly they'd had that same sort of feedback, and they were like, well, actually, you do need it, because then it's that idea of like saying yes to an idea and having a currency, even if everyone's on board with it. It's just like, oh yes, you get something for it, just so that when you want to deny something, then it feels stronger in that thing. So I thought that was really interesting that they'd actually included that this time around for Castles in the Air. And I was like, oh yeah, Taylor did talk about that last time. And it just, I was like, yeah, that felt like a step up, or at least like a second, like, hey, it is important to have these results. We could just storytell, but actually it's important for safety reasons to have them.
One thing I noticed in reading this is in Good Society, if I remember correctly, there's a part of it that Good Society is a lot about gender and class. And there's a part in the book that says Jane Austen didn't really focus on race. These stories aren't really, like, they're kind of race blind as far as playing Good Society. Yes. Maybe not the initial novels.
Yes.
And something that I thought was really interesting and a strong aspect of this game is this game has much more focus on race and ethnicity if players wanted to, which I think is a really valuable option. There's also, it felt like this game was a little more outwardly political than Good Society is, because there's the activist character role that you can have as an adult in this game, which is specifically not based on character archetypes from the books that it takes inspiration from, but actually from, like, it lists, like, here are some real life activists. And there's a big portion in the sort of end part of the book that talks about the political realities of the time. And there are also two family roles that are, one is the immigrant family role, and then there's another one that's the deep rooted, which is for more indigenous type people. So people who are still seen as outsiders by some people in the world, but like actually have the most roots in the place that they are than compared to anyone else, which I really liked. I thought that was a good addition for this game. Obviously there are political things in Good Society because there's stuff with gender and there's stuff with class, but I liked that there was guidance for stuff with race and other things. In fact, I screenshotted a little section that I thought was really nice guidance for a facilitator, which says, playing with prejudice without enacting it. While questions can be a very helpful tool in highlighting the setting, it is important to ask them thoughtfully to avoid accidentally calling forth harmful stereotypes. Asking a question like, what do you think of the new minister being of a different race than you, can make the player feel like they must say something prejudiced. Instead of asking questions that elicit prejudice, try and direct questions about discrimination to the characters who are being discriminated against, so that they have a chance to take control of the narrative around these sensitive issues. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, no, and I think what I wonder, again, as you said, the different sources. So Good Society is on this Jane Austen, who wasn't necessarily focusing on these. Whereas you have these other sources, and again, as you said, it's sort of the US and in Canada, going through this Gilded Age, this sort of rich time of like industrialization, votes for women, all that sort of thing. And because you do have this transition period of time, like you could be a couple of years, or it could be like half a lifetime, depending on what you're doing. And I really appreciated that. Yeah, this is at this point, a lot of stuff happened in a short space of time, of 10, 15 years. And there's always that question of the Regency being, I think it was like at most 8 years, but not much moved. It was just an idea, of like, oh, these things happening, and then things change. So it was a bit more static, and you don't really have that time skip per se. Whereas here, it's like, yeah, you're going to have the time skip, and because it's centered in a town that you guys create in backstory, yeah, you're going to see changes about like what's now different, that you're an adult that you thought was really cool or was a part of your childhood, and now it's changed. So I like that they've introduced like change in that way. And yeah, it's always going to be political, or it's always going to have, when you go to the other side of it, you're like, oh yeah, that wasn't a good thing, or oh, I never saw it that way. And I do appreciate them making the effort to be like, yeah, the activist, the teacher, along with like the heir and all that sort of thing, and then having the ability to have character archetypes or backgrounds which are able to explore this. And also, we talked about this before with the collaboration, this idea of like as is, off, or reverse. And it even gives suggestions for the reverse for those two, the deep-rooted and the immigrant as well. But again, it says like, hey, just treat it sensitively, like, when you want to talk about these things, and make sure that everyone's on board, because as you said, you don't want to have the sudden be put on the spot to discriminate against someone when that's not what this game's about at all. It's just being, at its heart, exploring friendships that survive years, or like faded friendships coming maybe into romance, or like friendships that fall apart over years. And I just find that such an interesting dynamic compared to, say, the Regency idea, which is always like, and they must now marry, and now they're in love. Oh, it's more of a farce or matchmaking, just because that's what I associate with that. Whereas like Little Women and stuff, I'm thinking, yeah, the hardships of like suddenly one of your siblings gets sick, and what do you do for that? And suddenly you might have to get a role, or you might be moved out of your house, or your fortunes change. I think there's an example that they bring up there as well. So yeah, it feels very different, but the system works so well for it. Like hardly any big changes to it, which I thought was like, oh, it's such a good system. God, those story brewers, they don't need to change much except they do a second edition. But other than that.
Yeah, I took notes of the differences I noted from Good Society. I don't think we've specifically mentioned this yet, but in this game, you basically play through a special cycle of play that's considerably longer, where you are playing as children. So you make your characters as they are as children. They have their family backgrounds. They have a kind of character role. It's not as mechanical as the adult one, because you don't have as many little bits and pieces. It's mostly just like, here's some things that your character might be like.
Yeah.
So the book suggests that the childhood part of play take 3 to 4 sessions, which is including the session where you make your characters. It doesn't really carve that out separately. And then to play as many sessions, another 4 sessions as the adult characters, potentially more. I think it says at least 2 cycles and as many as 8 cycles, I think.
Yeah.
So this game is... Good Society is also designed for, I think, a little bit medium-term play, I guess. So, like, 8 to 10 sessions. But this game is as well, which I like. I think it's, like I was saying, I'm more inclined to those sorts of games right now, where it's, okay, we're going to play this many sessions and we're going to get through this much stuff.
And you have, you know what's next, and you should get excited for, all right, now the next phase where we've transitioned to being adults and seeing where all these decisions have come to fruition, what the consequences of it is. Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. And yeah, like you said, the sort of suggested model of like, if you had like 8 sessions, like the first 4 are childhood, then you transition and then you do the next 4. Again, I say this without ever running a full game. We've talked about this before or anything like that. I feel like, why would I want to do any more than like 4 and 4? I feel like if you were going to do like extra cycles for the adults, I would want extra cycles for the childhood. And I don't know, again, this is me maybe breaking the game already. Because there are other games where you play children and then you flash forward to being adults. I think there's a game called Here We Used to Fly, which is like a group of adults that go to a theme park and you remember how it was and now how it is. And I wondered if you could do something like that with Castles in the Air, where you would have one 4 sessions of childhood, then 4 sessions of adult, and then go back and flash forward like it's the summer where it all happened. But I don't know if that's a lot of pressure on the players to be like, but what is the continuity, and like I don't know. I like the idea that you build up the children almost like a tutorial, like this is how we play the game, and all the decisions are kind of like little, not railroady, but it's like this novel chapter is going to be an event chapter, and then the next one's going to be a visitation chapter, and then it's like, and now you're adults, let's go, So I don't know if it's more, it's like a tutorial level there, but I just thought I'd like the idea to be able to flash back to moments as kids. Is the only thing I'd say. If you were going to have more sessions as adults, I don't want to lose that connection to, I feel you spent that time creating these children. I don't know. What's your thoughts? Again, appreciated that neither of us have played this game. We've only read it.
Yes, unfortunately, this game in my dream, my castle in the air. Yes. I would maybe throw together a group to play it at least a little bit before recording this episode, but that didn't happen.
As if I was going to do that. I was read this book. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, and honestly, all that really means is I had the thought that it would be cool to do that, and then pretty quickly was like, I don't have time. Sadly, and no. I don't think the game, I really could have done it after reading it. But as to your question, that's interesting. It's funny that you mentioned that you haven't seen the Greta Gerwig Little Women that came out, I think 2017, something like that.
Yeah, a little while ago.
Because in that movie, that kind of is what they do. They go back and forth. Okay. Like Little Women, the actual book is in 2 parts. It was originally published as 2 books, I think. So the first part is mostly them as children, young adults, and then it goes on into their adulthood. But the movie does go back and forth. Sometimes it's a little confusing almost because it's the same actors the whole time. They're not
that's impossible then. Yeah.
There's some things like with the lighting, especially later on in the movie, where you can really tell, but some parts in the middle you're like, wait a minute, where am I? No. It's a really good movie, but that is a little confusing sometimes. So I think that would be interesting. The other thing is, if you play, let's say you did want to play like whatever, 2 cycles and or 4 sessions as the kids, and then you wanted to play like 8 sessions as adults, you can do the what is it called, time passing phase, time marches on phase.
Time moves on now. Plane is calling it.
So you could do it that if you were like, okay, I want to explore more of this, but I'm not sure what's going to happen. Like, you could say, okay, and now another 5 years goes by, and how have we changed? So you can play it in phases like that. So the epistolary phase in this game introduces some additional things that aren't just writing letters. It also includes diary entries, a school report, which I think is so fun. That's such a fun idea to do as kids. Newspaper article. You can also, as a kid, invent a story or game. So you could say, oh yeah, I've been playing this cops and robbers game with kids in the town or whatever. And then for adults, it adds describe a dream or nightmare and describe a weather interlude. I imagine if you wanted to, you could add
a flashback,
narrate a flashback or like a flashback vignette there. I feel like that would be the place that it makes the most sense.
Yeah, because again, in the adult phase, when it adds in the rumor and scandal, you don't have that as children. Although I love the idea of children be like, oh, Pete is stinky. Oh, spread it, But the idea that you could also make a scene to be like how this rumor got created or the scandal got created, which I thought was fun. Because I liked all the stuff for the childhood ones, as you said, like writing a diary entry, but also school report, making up a game or story. I just thought it was really fun. But then you lose that. And I was like, oh, that's a shame. But then it was like a nightmare or dream. I thought, that is so, all those classic books where they wake up in a sweat because they're like, oh, we almost kissed and we didn't, and all that sort of thing. I just thought that was so much fun. And the weather interlude stuff, I always think is really interesting because a lot of classic writers always are like, well, it's stormy, and our characters, they have feelings too, and it's like, oh, the weather mirrors what's inside the people and all that sort of. I like that and as with this game and as with Good Society, a lot of it is all collaboration, so it allows the players to be like, here's me setting up the scene and how it is, and and give them that reign rather than the facilitator or just the person that's in charge of reading the book sets up everything. I just thought the nightmare dream and the weather interlude, I just thought, oh yes, of course I want to do that, instead of writing a letter, because sometimes you're like, God, I don't know what I'd write to this person. I want something a little bit different. So yeah, no, I thought those additions for the epistolary phase were really good and really strong.
Yeah, especially because since this is set in a different time period, there were cars. So travel and letters. I mean, a lot of times the reason you're writing letters to people in the Regency era is because they live someplace else and it takes a day or two to get there. So you have to write letters to keep in touch. Whereas in this game, there are other types of things that you can be doing. Maybe you've gone overseas, so a letter is more pertinent. But if you're still in the same town as someone else, then saying, okay, I don't really have any letters to write, but I do have a traumatic weather event. I'm trying to find where it is in the book. The cool thing about the weather is that it gives you, like, if it's dawn, then you have this sort of thing that you're narrating.
A suggestion for what the scene could be. You set up it's dawn, day, evening and night or something like that, or dusk in there, and then they'd be like, I think I want to say hope was dawn. Which I thought was really cool and really interesting. So you're not just like, the weather's terrible, which is what I always go to. In the book, it's 109. I'm not sure what it is in the PDF, but yeah, dawn is a new hope. Dusk is things that will never be. Day is a vignette of simple joys or the busyness of life, which is quite fun actually for the day. Overcast, which is brooding or I can't even say that word, but that word. A difficult question. And then storm is a passion or outrage, rash action that breaks from the previous behaviour. So yeah, actually, it's arranging things. So not just a monologue, but the idea of an actual scene or even a vignette. So you're not. So yeah, it's nice that you can be able to do monologues without spending a monologue token as well. Again, another thing that comes up here. I think the other bit that struck me, and again, I'd love to see this in play and how it would work, was this idea of a bosom rival or enemy, which I feel like, so I misread it at first and I was like, so this is one of your connections. It's like, that Stinky Pete, I hate that guy. And then you fall in love with him at the end, right? No, it's something that you, as a flaw that your character deals with. And it reminds me so much of, we talked about it before and I'm going to get the name wrong now, but the struggles that people have with like duty and passion, that sort of like, you tick those things. Yeah, I can't remember what it's called. Like
inner conflict, in Good Society.
So this one, it already has it in there that your character since childhood suffers from this bosom enemy or rival, which is like, selfishness or brashness or anger, or it's something that you can put that will put you in, quick to anger or something like that. So you're put in situations, or you can put yourself in situations where you're like, this thing will challenge you, and do you overcome it or not? I just thought, God, that's so true. Like, stuff that you suffer with as a kid, like anxiety, still manifests when you're an adult. It's like, how can you overcome these things? I just thought that was really interesting. I don't know if I'd call it bosom rivals. I assume it's something from Little Women or something.
It is, yeah. Maybe only gripe with this game is that I think the term bosom rivals or bosom enemy, I think is what it's actually called.
Yeah, I get it. It's mixed all the time,
is confusing because it is a thing that you're struggling, like an aspect of your personality that you're struggling with. I believe what it comes from is in Anne of Green Gables. Anne once, there's like, she calls people a kindred spirit. So her best friend, she's like, oh, you're such a kindred spirit. Like we have like the same, whatever, we go all together. And then I think she says she wants a bosom friend or something like that. Like her dream is to have because she's an orphan. Right. So she has no friends and then ends up living in this town. So I understand why they named it that, because it is referring to that, but it is also confusing because you would think that it's a person and it's not. it's yourself.
Yeah, I think I'd call it because I feel like it is talking about a person rather than like an aspect of you that's integral to who you are, and it's something that you struggle with. And like as children, obviously, children are trying to learn, and they're like, but this is so unfair that I feel this way. And you're like, yeah, but you got to grow out of it or change it. So yeah, I too, every time I was like, it's not a person, it's an inner flaw.
Yeah, it's a confusing name for it to be. It is interesting though, because since I've run a decent amount of Good Society, one thing that I run into sometimes that I think this game would be easier for players in some ways is that because Good Society is about your character, kind of the through line of it is your character's desires versus the expectations of the time. So your reputation phase, you might do something that is morally good, but you get bad reputation for doing it because, you know, standing up for someone less fortunate, if you are of, you know, from the upper crust, is actually bad.
Yeah,
Everyone
no
judges you for doing it.
Yes.
Yeah. So sometimes I have had a lot of times with players where they struggle with that because they are thinking the reputation is if I do something good, morally good, or good for my character growth, then I get good reputation. If I do something bad, and it's no, they're kind of unrelated. Whereas this game, I would say the cohesive thing to it is focusing on personal improvement.
Agreed.
So it is more straightforward with the bosom enemy phase where did you do something, did you behave well despite your flaw, or did you
overcome it? Yeah, exactly.
Did you overcome it, or did you use it for good? You know, there's the example of someone being obstinate, but then that means that they're really stubborn in pursuing something that they think is right. Or did you let yourself be controlled by it, so you get into a fight or you won't do your schoolwork or whatever? I think that's in a way easier for players to instinctively understand.
Yes, agreed.
Because it is personal improvement. It's not how society views you.
Everyone has, their own individual one. And they can also change them as well if it doesn't fit anymore. We can find something else. Yeah, again, throughout this whole book, very much like Good Society, it repeats itself a lot. But that's okay. I don't mind that because I know it's trying to get across, ultimately, I feel like very obvious, simple concepts. Like obviously you and I, because we've run it to a certain extent or like read it a few times, but I feel like this should be straightforward to somebody who's picking it up for the first time, because again, it could be quite overwhelming to see that initial structure and then having cards. But I feel like there's less sheets, I feel like, compared to, I say that less sheets, but you have two characters technically, so I don't know, but it felt less like putting stuff together. Like it felt easy to be like, oh well, we got the character, children role and family background, and then your adult, you know, is just the adult role plus the background, and then that's kind of it. You don't need to have any additional things other than create your connections, which was fun. Yeah, I think overall, like I really enjoyed thinking about it and like liking the idea of what kind of stories we can tell, which involve the same character over many years, but having children at the heart of it. Because often, I don't know about yourself, when we have games that involve children, usually they're children for a while. So you got like Kids on Bikes or Tales from the Loop, and there's always possibly bad things that might happen to them. And that's okay. Like it's kind of the horror genre of it, but it's quite nice to have like, you know, misfortunes can be played on these characters, but we feel for them and we know that we're going to tell a really good story. And we're going to see them grow up into adulthood. They're not going to be hunted down by some killer or anything like that. But like we root for them, and I think starting young, we build up and we kind of go to hopefully like our characters a lot, which I always think is interesting. The other thing, because we talked about it before with Good Society, that when you facilitate, you tend not to have a major character, right? Is that correct? I can't remember off the top of my head.
I personally have tended not to, although the game I'm running now, I am for the first time because there's only 3 players. And so the game Good Society, well, I think Good Society is Castles in the Air certainly does.
It suggests it, yeah.
Expect the facilitator to be playing a major character. Yeah. I just have mostly played where there's like already 5 players. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to add. But I think actually during the last episode I was like, I'd really like to play sometime as the facilitator with a major character, and now I am. And it's actually really fun. I was kind of worried about it, but I was like, oh, this is like I kind of am playing the one that I'm playing as the way that you would play a more prominent NPC especially because it's for a paid game. So I don't want to be like, hey, everyone, you're paying me for the session, but
And
it's
my time to monologue. Give me all your monologue tokens. Yes.
It's the Taylor show, and it's all about me. If it wasn't a paid game, I probably wouldn't really care that much if I was taking
you're aware, you're more aware of it for sure. Yeah.
But it's been really fun. And yeah, for people listening, if you can facilitate and play a major character, I do think it gives you more to do. That's, which in a good way, it gives you more to do.
Yeah, that was the difference I saw with the Good Society and Castles in the Air. It was like, it expects you to have a major character and encourages it and gives you quite good advice for it. And I think for the first time, and I know you have it for the Good Society as well, but like the first time reading through is like, oh, and if you want to play it just 2 people, here's just some extra advice on how to do it. And I was like, oh, that's really fun actually, because I can imagine it being this particular version of Pen from Good Society working really well. This idea of following 2 childhood friends and where they end up could be very blood brothers. I don't know, but like that sort of. But I just thought, oh yeah, that'd be really nice to do. And again, not any more difficult than having an extra couple of players in. Like, you just have to make more connections and make sure that you're always on the same page and what interests you. But I was like, they've actually thought, yeah, we want to encourage people, no matter how many players they have, that they can play it. So yeah, I thought it was interesting to have 2-player advice.
Yeah, the 2-player advice was really helpful. I believe, because I kind of went back and forth, like I said, looking at Good Society in this game. Good Society and Castles in the Air both have advice for playing without a facilitator, basically playing GM-less. I think only Castles in the Air has 2-player advice, and it's really good. It's really helpful, and I could see a lot of people. There's a lot of people who want to play games and can't get a group together. So I could really see like 2 friends or like, a couple playing through this game and having a really fun time with it, because a lot of times, well, Little Women is not really like this because Little Women has kind of 4 major characters.
Yeah, but they're all very close to each other, right? So
yeah, and like Anne of Green Gables is Anne. She's the main character. So I feel like a 2-player game could be really well suited to simulating that type of story where it's like it really is about Anne and Gilbert, or Anne and her best friend, that sort of thing. Yeah. So I thought that was really cool. I was really excited reading that part.
The other big major difference, which, again, it gets mentioned early on, is that there's no predetermined play sets for this compared to Society. And I think that's probably very good. I mean, I feel like if they did do that, I'd be excited, because then I think that would give me more to be like, oh, this is it. I should read Little Women, or I should look at these other. I mean, they've got a whole list of reading in the back, but I think this one is like, maybe the play sets put people off, perhaps, because obviously it's like, here's some pre-generated, she says quotation marks, of like desires and families and stuff like that. But it's like, no, if you've got a strong idea, you can absolutely mix and match. It's not going to hurt our games, so to speak. So I thought that was really interesting, because I for me, the play sets for Good Society are always a big part of it, because it's like, okay, what kind of game do we want? Okay, here, I've printed these out, or we've put it online. Again, if people aren't familiar with like narrative play, or even Jane Austen, is like, okay, well, here's these tropes, etc. Whereas maybe it's because you start as kids. Yeah, of course you're going to know someone that is a scamp, or the bookworm, or the princess or prince, which I thought was great. All the characters are all gender neutral, the archetypes and stuff. But I just thought, yeah, I kind of liked how it's like, yeah, you can mix and match, because who you are as a kid doesn't necessarily translate to who you are as an adult. There could be some wild change you have when you go through puberty, or transition to adulthood. Sorry, not puberty, but that particular period.
Well, both.
Both. Yeah.
Certainly a little of both.
Yeah.
When I was reading through this, the strength of the play sets is players can kind of just jump in and only have to figure out, either if you're playing a playset in full, what's already been selected for them, a playset in part, they can kind of go, okay, here's the vibe of like these other things, which makes things a little bit more streamlined. I get the feeling that playing this game would involve more out of character play than Good Society does, because there are basically, you do character creation kind of twice. You do it once as children, you play for a while as children, and then you kind of do it all again as adults. You can change your relationships with other people. You can change the connections. You change a lot of stuff. I don't think this is a problem, but I could see some types of players. I've definitely played with people before with games who, if a game doesn't have like in-character role play, the parts that are the more world buildy, they're kind of like, let's get this over with so we can do the acting part. I think that's something to be aware of if you're thinking about playing this game and you know that other people in your group aren't as into the, oh, what if this and what if that, and let's decide stuff about the town and let's write some little things. Maybe people would check out doing that part. I think it sounds really fun. A session 0 to me is almost more exciting than ending a game.
Wow, that's high praise from someone who's about to finish a long-term campaign.
Yeah. Well, the beginning of things is so, there's so much possibility. And then the end of things, as a GM, it's like, okay, think about how many TV shows the end of the series people get mad about.
True. It's very true.
It's like, is everyone gonna hate me for this? So I think I love a session 0 and character creation. I think it's so fun.
We kind of mentioned it a little bit, but yeah, you create, in quotation marks, a town. It's kind of similar to the Kids on Bikes, where like creating town is kind of the part of the situation of like, we add little bits to it. So here it's really simplified about you find a name, you add something, add like 2 details for it, and then that's kind of it. And then when you transition to adulthood, you go, what has changed in the town for you? And adding details there. So it's not like you must think of like the flag of the town or what the flower is or anything like that. But I always like that, because then it gives you something to build on. And you could go in as deep and detailed as you the players want, or step back and allow that stuff to grow. Because then, because it ties into the collaboration stuff. Is that how much, I say historical accuracy, but like, how much do you want to be like, hey, we're set in a remote place in Canada, but maybe there's lots of logging, so maybe there's a bit of pollution and like, there's a urbanization and industrialization. How much is that going to feature in the story? Do we want to talk about war? Perhaps, like that's always on the horizon, and it's like, men being shipped off somewhere, and maybe there's a lot more women in roles, and then suddenly, the men are all back and boo. So like, what I kind of like having those conversations, because it ultimately doesn't matter to my role play necessarily, but it allows me to go, oh, that's really cool that me, the audience, can see that and how that affects the characters, and just fleshes out the world and it feels a bit more real. So yeah, I love stuff like that, and I love going like, oh, table talk, oh, what about this, and everyone's like, oh, yeah. I just anything like that is super fun. So yeah, I understand why people are like, no, I just want to get on with my letter writing and that's it. I don't want to do anything else. I think allowing the time for people to talk about and get excited, that's a one-way ticket to like character art, people writing fans fiction of their own characters. So I'm all here for it to be like, yes, be more creative with your role playing. Yeah.
There are aspects of this game that I feel like really know what they're doing as far as conveying time passing, because that's the biggest difference between this game and Good Society. Like you said, Regency Era is like 8 years. Yeah. So even if you play a pretty drawn out game of Good Society, you're playing as adults, you're probably only going to get into maybe a few years. Whereas this game, you could play 40, 50 years. You could have the end of the game. I mean, really, one of the examples it gives in the book as far as the epilogue is a kind of glimpse into like the 1980s, where these 2 girls are like going to college, and they talk about, oh yes, I've heard about this person, this professor who was key in spearheading women being allowed to attend this college for the first time. So, I mean, it could be 100 years.
I love the idea.
Spanning. Yeah. And I think there's some things that this game really does well with regards to getting everyone in that headspace. The expansions for the letter writing and the weather, like we mentioned. But also, I think, like you mentioned, having the town and deciding, okay, this is what this town is at the beginning of the game. Here's how it changed, over the next 10 to 15 years, because that gives you such a personal connection that can be positive. It could be negative. It could be sad. It could be bittersweet, where, oh, this tree that we used to climb as kids has been cut down But instead, now there's like this other good thing that we like there. Like there's, you know, I don't know, a billiard hall or something.
Oh, yeah, it's not about the tree. It's just a stump left. But hey, let's go play some pool.
We can play pool now. Or potentially like a railroad being built that goes to the town. So the town was very remote, and one of the negative things is you couldn't see people very often, but now it's bustling and has jumped up, you know, 2,000 more people live here. So I think that's really cool, because I think with games that are very collaborative, sometimes people will be nervous to or just can't think of specifics. So the game can feel kind of like, where are we? What's going on? Like a little nebulous. So anything in the text that is like, decide this thing, describe the weather, describe what the place looks like, describe what you're wearing, I think is really helpful. And towards the end, I think there's like a little QR code that's like, here's like some examples of clothing, and there's a long list of names, which I love, because when playing Good Society, that's always the thing that I struggle with, is going, what do I name this person?
Algernon, that's another Algernon. Sebastian. Yes.
Yeah. So I think giving like these concrete, specific things is really a strength, because you just feel, you know, you do the growing up stuff and then you get to decide, okay, you know, what's different, what's changed. Then you can go, oh my gosh, my character's been gone for 4 years. When she left, you know, her parents were staying at this boarding house, and then she comes back, that boarding house is gone, and now her parents are living someplace, like whatever. Those types of things I think are so strong.
I think that's the key thing here. Whilst Good Society also had like the town it's in, obviously we didn't have the town creation, but yeah, ultimately we are following these characters who still live or have gone away and then come back to the town. You don't necessarily go, and now we move to a different town. Like, I'm sure you could.
Yeah.
But I think you lose some of that magic, because it's that idea of like, oh, a very Hallmark movie, right? Like, I came back for Christmas, and oh, it's the old Christmas tree grower family, and oh, that guy I used to hang out with when I was like 15, he's still here, and wow, he's just got out of his divorce. I don't know. You know, that sort of...
oh, he's kind of hot.
He's kind of hot now, and he's never wears a shirt. I mean, it's obviously different for 1870s, but yeah, I feel like there's something about like always coming back to your roots, or not being able to leave a town. That's very interesting. And again, that sort of idea of like modern day, obviously we move all the way around the world and all that sort of thing. It's very easy, there's the quotation marks, to do that, where it's harder to do that in these games for various means. And I just thought that's really interesting, actually, the idea that we're following these characters, and they could go away for, like you said, like 4 years, and maybe we don't see them the next cycle or whatever, and we have a new character. Certainly Good Society could do that, but really it's about like how this town changes, and how you change from the town, and whether that's for good or for ill, or you never change, you've always been here, and everyone left and everyone comes back, and very you know, like there's the one guy who stays, and everyone, and he's like, you got to come back to Derry, you got to stop. I mean, it's a weird kind of Castles in the Air. It's like, hey guys, there's an expansion, you know, the horrible clouds.
I was earlier thinking that I think there is, I can't remember what it's called. I think there is a TTRPG that is where you play as kids and then you come back. I forget what, there might be more than one.
I'm sure it's, if not, I'm sure someone's about to make it, because it's it feels wild that's that kind of idea of like coming back to the hometown, because there's so many films and so many books talk about like that, you know, becoming an adult or coming of age. That's what I was thinking of. But you're still that small kid who's got scraped up knees. But now you've got a nice dress on. I don't know. So all the stuff I was reading about it, again, like I think Good Society is always it was a good fun time anyway, and it had a really good structure. And now here, I'm like, this feels more exciting to me, because we can really delve into those characters and get very nuanced or very complex because of this sort of forced change in the time. And I just feel like by the end of it, I think you would have grown really fond of them. And I'm not saying that's no shame to Good Society. I know it's very, very different. But I thought to myself, what a cool way to like change or use a system and that get another setting to it. Because often you like, you know, when it's D&D, it's like, oh, what if it's Dracula but in 5e? What if it's you know, like the Feywild or fairy stuff, but it's 5e? Here it's like, okay, it's Good Society, but it's feels to me a very different kind of classic literature, which I don't know if it's more appealing than that sort of Regency, Jane Austen kind of vibe. But like, 'cause like I said, I've not really read or watched any of that, but I'm instantly like, oh, this feels so cool for character development. Of course, I want to go and play this. And I don't know if I think I would play it. I'd like to play it more than Good Society, just because I like the idea of like seeing what that transition is like, you know?
Yeah, you talking about other types of things. While I was reading this, I was like, the other thing this would be really good for, I think, would be playing a Little House on the Prairie style game, because it's set in the same time period. Anne of Green Gables is kind of a little nebulous and contradictory in its time. There's some anachronisms and things that don't make sense, but the first book takes place roughly 1876. Little Women starts in the early 1860s, and then the first Little House on the Prairie book takes place in the early 1870s, so it's kind of right in the middle. The setting is more rural, but especially the Little House on the Prairie books, they move around too much. So it wouldn't work that well. But the TV show, like if anybody was really a fan of the TV show, I could see this working perfectly well for that, where you play as, you play as children, and then you grow up and are a teacher or whatever.
Like overall, like I said, I thought it was a really good to read. I like the art. The cards look so nice. I was lucky enough to back the actual physical version, because you know me, I love physical stuff. But just like the backs of these cards look gorgeous.
So
I'm showing the Taylor now, and then like, and again, the cards for Good Society were very nice, but they're very plain. But these ones, I'm like, oh my god, there's so many nice like flowers on them and birds, and they're just really pretty. And I'm just like,
they are really pretty. The one thing I was sad about, which I imagine has to have been a budget thing, this game does not have a deck of connections, which is one of the things that Good Society has, which is, I don't even know if we talked about it, but there's little cards that have art of all these different connections that you can play. This game, you still have connections, but there's not a deck of connections with the art, which I was like, I would have really liked to see what that looks like. But I imagine that's considerably more expensive to have all these portraits.
It's a shame, because I guess because it did have a Kickstarter, this, and it got fun. I guess maybe it's like, oh, well, you have to have the kids' deck of connections, perhaps, and then an adult one. But I'd 100%... like, because the deck of connections, I think, is a roughly, I think it is 50 cards or something, and obviously it has like two sides to it about like, so you have different sort of traits for each one. But I'd like the idea of like, you've got 20 for each. Yeah, you're right. I'm gutted now, because I was like, but that connection stuff was so good, because it was perfect. 'Cause you had various suitors you can have. I always remember Mortimer is always the one I always remember Mortimer, and I'm like, oh, that's snuggling. I like that idea as just a prop for any game, really. So yeah, you're right. Oh, they've missed a trick there.
I know. Maybe in the second edition, which I'm sure, I guess, will be announced probably in like a week or something.
I don't know. We'll be hot on it at this point. Yeah. Absolutely. If you had any advice to somebody, obviously, as I said, neither of us have played this game. You've run a lot of Good Society, but if someone was coming to Castles in the Air, what kind of advice would you give them? I guess to read it, or like anything to take away from the reading of it in order to facilitate their own games, I guess, which I know is a very hard question to answer when you've not run it yourself.
Well, I'll just give you the advice, Fiona, since I'm talking to you, which is watch the Anne of Green Gables miniseries.
That is fair. Yeah, great.
It's so good. And I don't have as much connection to it because it came out when I was an adult, but the Greta Gerwig Little Women movie is really good. I think it has a lot to say about Louisa May Alcott herself. For people who aren't as familiar, there's a lot of speculation as to her gender and her sexuality and the way that her life is different from Jo March, and where they're the same, where they're different. I think is really interesting. I guess Anne of Green Gables and The Little Women maybe are not as popular things as Pride and Prejudice, but I think they're very charming. And if you want to always have a soft spot for Canadian men saying sorry, because Gilbert Blythe and Gilbert's always having to apologize to Anne. She has a sharp temper. She breaks a slate over his head because he calls her Carrot. She has red hair. He calls her like Carrot Top or Carrot or something, and she smashes the thing on his head. And
take that, Gilbert. Yeah.
He's so in love with her. This is just me talking about Green Gables. He's so in love with her, but she hates him because he was mean to her that one time.
Never forget. Yes.
Has to constantly say sorry. But those types of grudges, I think, are really inform this game where you could have a quarrel with someone and it lasts forever. But yeah, I guess watch the source material, read the source material. There's a lot of short stories that they link to.
Yeah, and they've got not only just obviously of the two source materials there, but also they're like, hey, we realize that these authors aren't perfect. So here's stuff about if they were if you wanted to look for people of color's experience in this time, here's some diaries. So again, well researched. I think we're agreed on that front. But that's great advice. Because I thought to myself, God, I've not seen any of these things, but I like the idea. And of course, I should just go and watch a couple of episodes and go, yeah, now I get it. Yes, no, yes, good advice. Good advice. Yeah, I don't know if it's just a UK thing, because I never read or watched either of those things. Like, even Little House on the Prairie, I was like, I know of it, but I was like, it's really, maybe
makes sense. More like US and Canada centered. Apparently, also, I've learned from reading this, there's a 40-episode anime adaptation of Little Men, which is a sequel to Little Women, which I've never heard of, and now I'm like, okay, I guess I have to watch that.
I guess I have to see what that is. Yeah, that's like, sometimes you find all sorts. You're like, of course, there's an anime of some of these kind of things, right?
Yeah.
Well, Taylor, thank you so much for joining us yet again on the DM's Book Club. Before we sign off, where can we find you if you want to be found on the internet? Any cool projects or any announcements you have coming out? Let us know now.
Yeah, I have a couple things. One is, you can find me online everywhere at Roll for Felicity, mostly on Blue Sky, Twitch, YouTube, occasionally other places. But I have a stream that's coming up on May 9th. That is to promo a Kickstarter of a game called Band-Aids and Bullet Holes, which is not like Good Society, other than the fact that it is heavily inspired by another genre. It's basically like you get to play your own John Wick movie. So you're playing as these characters who are, some of them like mercenaries for hire, and so you're going from scene to scene, and you also don't play the same character the whole time, so you pick up a character and play them and then put them back down and play someone else. It's gonna be cool. So that's gonna be on May 9th. And then I think the only other thing I really have going on right now is I do have my Start Playing, so you can book me for games on that, including Good Society. And then I have my podcast, which is called Warrior Chats, which is my Warrior Cats podcast. I don't even know if I mentioned it last time. But my friends and I read through the Warrior Cats books for the first time as adults. I call it a podcast because of the pun. It's like PAW, but it's a bunch of videos. It's more of a talk show. But if you look up Warrior Chats on YouTube, you'll find the previous episodes, and it's a very silly time.
It's what we need right now, I think. So, thank you so much, Taylor, for coming out, and thanks to everyone for listening to this episode of the DM's Book Club. We'll be back next week with another episode, but until then, we'll say goodbye for now. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.